Welcome to another session of Teams in 20. Today, I'm really excited to have Chris Wilson with us, who is going to take us through a fantastic scenario of how you can use Copilot in your day-to-day working life. So, Chris, fantastic to have you here today. I'm going to hand straight over to you because I know you've got so much to show us in this next 20 minutes.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm going to take you through a scenario today, which is looking at if I'm a learning and development manager, how I can use Copilot in my day-to-day. And in my scenario, I've just come back for a few days off and I'm catching up on the work I need to do. So I'm going to start my day, just come back from my annual leave, and I'm going to start my day in Copilot. And as with a lot of people, the first thing I will need to do is just catch up on anything that I might have missed from the few days away. You can see here that I'm on copilot.microsoft.com. I'm signed into the account up here, and I've got the options here between work and web. The difference here being that if I ask Copilot a question on work, I will be within the context of my work environment. I'll be looking at all the information that I've got access to. If I switch over to the web, Copilot is now going to be grounded in the internet and will not have access to my work files, will not have access to the information that I've got access to. So I'll switch back over to work and start with some of the prompts. We'll start here then with catching up on the last 14 days while I've been away. And I'll ask Copilot to summarize the messages that I've missed while I've been off and give me that information in a table with headings. You notice on here, I'm being very specific with the prompt. So I'm saying what I need to catch up on, what I'd like to Copilot to do, where it gives me the messages in the last 14 days. And I've also told Copilot how I'd like that information to be presented. This is where we talk around having the goal, the context, the source, and the expectation when we look at creating a prompt. If I put a really simple prompt in there of summarize my messages, Copilot will just make some assumptions around what information I need, how I want that information to be presented. Here I'm being very specific with my prompt and saying, this is why I want this prompt, this is the information that I need, and this is the way that I want that information to be presented to me. So we can see in here, Copilot's given me a table of the messages and chat messages that I've missed in the last 14 days since I've been off. And you can see a number of messages here from Billy, who in my scenario here is my manager. We're all talking around this Project Wingman and asking me to start looking at the required training and adoption for the organization. This is my scenario where my organization has decided to release Copilot to the whole organization, and I'm this training and development manager and need to start thinking about the training plan to get everybody upskilled in Copilot. So I can see here I've got all these messages around Project Wingman. What I like here as well is you can see some additional follow-on prompts that Copilot is suggesting. So here I've got Copilot suggesting for me to say, what other projects am I involved in? Find some more messages from Billy Vesta. And these are contextualized responses from Copilot where it will start to say, here's a sensible follow-on prompt based on the information that we've got already. So what I can do now is start to look at maybe learning around Project Wingman. So I'm going to talk around different types of prompts that we can use. And one of the really good ones with thinking about Copilot, when we're in that work context, is thinking around how I can use Copilot to catch up on something and how I can use Copilot to learn about something within my organization. Here I'm asking for information around Project Wingman. If I went and asked that question in the web context, Copilot's not going to have any information around this internal project of Project Wingman. This is information that we've got held on information that I've got access to within my work environment. Copilot here then has looked and found a number of documents, a number of messages related to Project Wingman, and can start to help me to understand what this project is, what the project is about, and the information that I need to start building out this training plan. Again, I've got some follow-on questions down here from Copilot already. So tell me more about the Project Wingman document. What are the prompt do's and don'ts? So this is following on from some of these files that Copilot has found for me. And again, who else is involved in this project? I'm going to ask a follow-on question here then of what are the timelines for the project. Now, what's interesting here is that we often talk around crafting the correct prompt. So as I mentioned, around having the goal, context, source, and expectation for the prompt. Here I'm not doing that, but I've got the context of the previous information that I've put within the prompt and the responses that I've got. So here I'm just asking a follow-on question. We've got the context that we're talking around already. Copilot already knows I'm talking about Project Wingman because that's part of this conversation. So now I can just in a conversational way say, what are the timelines for this project? And Copilot's going to know that we're talking about Project Wingman and look for the relevant timelines for that project. Now, I don't see any particular information here around the training plan for this project. I'm going to ask a question then, what's the plan for training during the project? Is there anything in the documentation that we've got access to which tells me about the training plan for the project? The other thing to point out on here is this 3 of 30 responses. When I talk around the context of the prompt and the conversation, this backwards and forwards that I'm having with Copilot, we have up to 30 responses within a conversation before I need to start a new conversation, which will essentially reset the context of that conversation as well. Here then we can see we've got the training plan for Project Wingman, includes the following key components, week 1 up to week 15 on here, all held within one of the documents that we've got access to. You can also see on here, if I hover over one of the references, which files we've found that information in. So I can see this is found within Project Wingman. This one is found within a Whiteboard file, Whiteboard 3 summary. This one is found in another Whiteboard file. And I can also expand the references down here and open the files directly from the references as well. Again, I can ask Copilot if I can find any specific Word documents that contain some information on the do's and don'ts of Copilot. So now in my scenario, again, I'm looking at what I need to do to start building out this training plan and seeing if I can be a bit more specific and finding specific documents that contain the information that I need to start building that plan. Now Copilot's found the 2 documents. Again, I can hover over here, I can see the documents that we've got access to, and we can see a summary of that information that's held within the documents here as well. That brings me on to the next type of prompt that we can use, which will be around summarizing information. I've got some information that's held within this response from Copilot here, so it gives me a brief overview of these particular documents, but I want to get a little bit more specific with that summarization as well. I'm going to ask here that I need to create a training plan for my organization to adopt Copilot. I'm going to ask Copilot to summarize specific files and list out the main points in no more than 10 bullet points. Again, I'm being quite specific here. I'm telling Copilot what I want it to do and how I want that information to be presented. Now I'm going to be, again, a little bit more specific, and I'm going to use the / on here to say exactly which files do I want to be summarized. I start typing the name of the file, then we'll filter down with anything that contains that name and that you have access to. So do's and don'ts one pager. So I'm asking Copilot there to summarize the information across those 2 Word files. And we can use up to 10 files within that particular prompt at the moment. So Copilot now has reviewed both of those files that I've asked it to, the ingredients one pager and the do's and don'ts one pager. And across all of that information has given me a concise list of 10 things that I need to be aware of when I'm starting to train people on Copilot. Now I can also do that in specific applications as well. So far we've been using the copilot.microsoft.com signed in as the work context. If I wanted to work on a single file, for example, then I would be doing that potentially within Microsoft Word, or the type of file, maybe that's PowerPoint or a Whiteboard. So if I come across here now and open the specific Word file, Now, what I say to customers is that if I'm working in one specific file, then I will probably be doing that within Word itself. If I'm working across multiple files and I'm looking for general information on a concept or looking to combine the content of multiple files, then I'll be doing that on the Copilot app, be that in Teams or on copilot.microsoft.com. Here now I'm looking at working on a specific file. So I can come into this Word document. I can access Copilot on the right-hand side here. Just reopen the file. I can access Copilot on the top right, which will open the Copilot pane on the right-hand side. Initially here, I get some options for some prompts to try. So we have some suggested prompts that you can use within Word, and we have this in each of the applications as well. Initially, I can say, summarize this document or ask a specific question about this document as well. We can also come down to the prompt box here and click on View Prompts. What this will do is it will give you, again, some suggested prompts. So we have some categories of prompts here, so either to understand or to ask some information. If I click on Understand, that will expand those types of prompts and give you some suggestions for prompts to get started. So we can tell me more about a particular project, summarize this document in 3 points, etc. We can also click on View More Prompts, which will open up Copilot Lab. This contains a curated list of prompts that are applicable to this application as well. Again, we have the different types of prompts within here that you can use. I can scroll down and again get some examples of prompts that I can start to use within Word. If I click on something like Find Specific Information, that will then put the starting point of that prompt within this prompt box for me to then go and complete. So initially what I'll do within here is just to summarize this document. Now, as the difference here between when I'm doing this on copilot.microsoft.com in the Copilot app or within the Word file is the information that I've got access to. As I'm doing this in Word, I'm only summarizing this information, the information held within this document. If I do that on the Copilot app, I'm potentially looking across all of the information, all of the data that I've got access to as an individual. Here we then have the summary of everything contained within this document. So rather than looking across all of my information that I've got access to, we're just summarizing this particular file. I can also use this prompt box then to ask specific questions about the file rather than just summarize as well. The other things we can do within Word is start to add content and context directly to the file as well. So if I go down to a new line here, you can see I've got my Copilot icon and I can draft with Copilot. Here I can then ask Copilot to add some information to the Word file for me. As an example, I can add a summary of this document here. The very useful prompt to use, maybe if you're adding things like a glossary to a file, adding an FAQ to a file, you can do that directly within the file itself by using the information that's held within that file. And then have the option to keep it, to regenerate it, or to make some minor adjustments to that output as well. I can also use Copilot to rewrite some content as well. So if I highlight just one paragraph, it's just a single line here, I can then click on the Copilot icon and I can ask Copilot to auto rewrite. If there's some information held within a paragraph or a particular line and you feel that maybe that's not written in the best way, you can ask Copilot to rewrite that for you. And you'll get some options here as to some different options on how that is been rewritten. And you can also ask Copilot to make it more professional, make it more casual, for example. You can then either insert below that particular paragraph or line or replace it entirely as well. If I move across to Microsoft Teams, and we can look at a Teams meeting and summarizing some information within there as well. Now, this is a pre-recorded meeting, so it's an example meeting that I held with Elena to get some information around, again, how we craft good prompts within Copilot. If you pre-recorded a meeting, you'll be able to go into the meeting here under Recent, and then you'll have a recap option at the top. Then you'll have a Copilot button on the right-hand side here. Here we can see then that we can start asking Copilot about information that happened, what happened during this call. Again, we've got our examples here of more prompts to use, so example prompts that we can use. And an example to start with would just be to recap the meeting. So either if you've missed the meeting entirely, you were invited but couldn't attend, you can go in, you can recap the meeting, or if it's a meeting that happened a little while ago and you need to have a refresher of what happened, and you can list and get a recap of that meeting here. Here then we'll just list out initially the key topics that were discussed during that call. But again, like Word, we can be much more specific and ask specific questions within this prompt as well. So I can ask within here, what was the best piece of advice that Elena gave for my users? This will then use the transcript of the call to look for that piece of information and then hopefully give us an answer on that. So the response from Copilot, the best piece of advice that Elena gave for your users was to iterate, and provide more details and context to help generate relevant outputs from Copilot. So there's a couple of different ways there that we've used to summarize information across either Copilot itself in a Word file to summarize the information, or get a summary of a Teams meeting as well. Now in my scenario, I'm going to look to start actually creating some of the content for my users to start to learn how to use Copilot. So for that, I'm going to initially use Whiteboard. Which will enable us to start creating some content and being able to help us start to draft a plan for our users with their Copilot training. So we now have Copilot within Whiteboard. So if I go and create a new whiteboard here, straight away we'll see we've got a Copilot icon down here, and we've got suggest initially. So this could be a whiteboard. Maybe you're having this conversation with multiple people. Multiple people could be working on this whiteboard at once. But I'm going to ask Copilot here to start suggesting ways to structure a 5-week training plan for new users of Microsoft 365 Copilot. Initially then we have 6 options, 6 suggestions from Copilot as to how we can get started with creating a training plan. We can also generate more. So if we wanted more than 6, each time I click on generate more, Copilot is going to add an additional 6 suggestions to this whiteboard as well. Once I'm happy with those, I can click on insert, and that's going to give me some initial content that I can start to edit with some initial ideas for the training plan for Copilot. What I can do then, if I click on a particular suggestion, a particular idea within here, I can also use Copilot within this bar. So I can also suggest additional content. I can also suggest additional content using just that initial idea. We can see on here then that we've got suggest more ideas in the same theme as monitor progress and offer feedback. If I wanted to get a little bit more in depth with these ideas, I can select each one, ask Copilot to suggest some additional or make some additional suggestions there, and I can insert those into Whiteboard as well. Now what I can do with Copilot is I can select all of those ideas. So imagine in this scenario, I've got lots of different people contributing lots of different ideas, probably going to have some of the similar ideas across lots of different suggestions from people. If I select all those ideas within Whiteboard, I can then click on categorize and ask Copilot to categorize those notes, create the categories for me, and then split those into the appropriate categories for me. So I've now got my categories here of objectives, training, progress, and feedback. And then again, I can choose to keep that, regenerate it, ask Copilot to suggest again, or revert and don't keep that. Finally, with Whiteboard, what I can do is I can also summarize that content. Again, imagine I've had this meeting with lots of different participants making these suggestions for these training plans. And now I can ask Copilot to summarize all of that content as well. And this will create a loop component for me so we can continue to collaborate on that training plan, and we'll get a copy and a summarization of all those whiteboard ideas within Loop. So here we can see we've got the 18 ideas generated, the key themes of the whiteboard, and then a picture of that whiteboard as well. And this is in a loop that I can then share across the users that are involved in the meeting. And as I say, we can keep collaborating on that content as well. Now, to continue to create, I'm going to go back over to Copilot itself, and I'm going to start a new chat. And I can ask Copilot now to start using all the information that I've gone through so far, things like the ingredients one-pager, the whiteboard that we've created, for Copilot to suggest a training plan for me. Again, I'm going to be specific with my prompt. I'm going to ask Copilot to create an engaging 5-week learning series on the best practice of prompting with M365 Copilot. I'm going to give Copilot the context, why I'm doing it, who the audience is in this case. We're all new to Copilot, and I'm going to narrow down the information that Copilot's going to use rather than use everything that I've got access to. I'm going to ask Copilot to use some specific files. Again, I'll ask Copilot to use the ingredients one-pager and maybe one of the whiteboards as well. Copilot's done a pretty good job there of creating this 5-week training series for me, the main points to cover during each of those 5 weeks as well. I can also ask Copilot to feed back on any content that it creates as well. So if I put a prompt in here, such as feedback of the training plan, that's just ways to So now I've got some additional suggestions from Copilot, being able to critique itself and give some additional information, some additional suggestions for how we could improve that training plan. Again, I could use a follow-on prompt. So now I've got my initial training plan. I now want to promote it. So let's ask Copilot to write a Viva Engage article to promote week 1 of the training series. Now I have my Viva Engage article that I can start to use to promote that training series as well. Finally, I'm going to move over to PowerPoint and start creating content that I can then share with my users within that training plan. Right, a blank presentation. We can do this now from templates. So if you've got some organizational asset libraries with some PowerPoint templates, you can start from those templates. So it's in your company branding. When I open Copilot in PowerPoint, I've got a few options here. So I can either create a presentation about, I can give Copilot a suggestion here, go and create a presentation about a Copilot training plan, but that won't use any of the information that I've got access to. That will just use the trained knowledge of Copilot. The better way to approach it would be to create a presentation from a file and give Copilot the context, give Copilot the content that I want it to use to create the presentation. So here I've got a how to prompt with Microsoft Copilot, a 5-week learning series as an example, as a document. And then I can also add some additional context into here for Copilot as well. So I can add some information to make sure that the presentation is more applicable, telling Copilot what I'm doing this for, creating a 5-week training program, telling Copilot the target audience. So they're all new to Copilot, and including a specific slide that lists out all the types of prompts that we can use. As we go through, Copilot will start to tell you now within PowerPoint what it's doing. So it'll start to list out each of the sections that it's going to create within the presentation as it's building it out. Our initial presentation, which I'm not expecting it to be perfect every time. You're probably not going to get to the finished article on the first run each time you run Copilot in PowerPoint, but I'll be looking to combine this then with Designer to get closer to that finished article that I can use for my end users. So hopefully that's taken you through some examples of how I could use Copilot in a particular scenario, my training and development manager scenario for rolling out Copilot to my organization, and how you can use Copilot in each of the apps and the different types of prompts that we can use across Copilot as well. Back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Chris. That was fantastic. I know a lot of our customers are really excited now to see Copilot working in Whiteboard as well, and how we can bring that together and bring multiple files together to and then create something new. So that was a fantastic display of using all those different tools, Copilot. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I can't wait to get started. So thanks very much, Chris. Thanks for joining us today. And everybody, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.